everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with the One Nation Under Whisky podcast. I'm joined today, and as always, for this end of year, this sort of recap episode of One Nation Under Whisky with both Jason Neal, Patrick Harris, Johnston Yellen, and Jessica Rabbit Lomas. Welcome both.
Full Sundays. Full Sunday name Sundays. Right there.
Full
right
Sunday
off the bat.
Names, yeah.
Well, I feel like it's the truncated of the latest version, which is Jessica Rabbit Guillermo Lomas. But I don't think Guillermo fit on the screen.
No, there's not enough characters for this audio format.
Although I hear Guillermo Lomas is a bit of a character.
Where's a fedora, I heard.
All right.
Do you want to give the listeners a little backstory on Guillermo Lomas?
Absolutely not. I was in a coffee shop in Helsinki, and I saw that there was a very nice coffee by a roaster that I'm quite into, who are out of Copenhagen, and the roaster of the coffee was Guillermo Lomas, and I just thought if I was ever going to have an international jet-setting name, that would have to be it. Guillermo. It's great. It's also my favourite character out of What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, right. That's what I was gonna bring him up, but I've got a question for you about the roaster. So does he just come, like you walk into his coffee shop and he roasts you? Like, how did he zing you?
He's also like a part-time comedian. It's a very confusing Finnish experience that I took down to a mistranslation.
I love the fact that you say if you ever have a globe-trotting lifestyle, when you're telling a story about Copenhagen roaster that you were enjoying in Helsinki.
Yeah. You're right.
When you live in Glasgow.
What, you mean you don't all go to a Helsinki coffee shop to pick up your coffee every weekend? Oh.
So listen, we have about 30 to 35,000 people that stream this podcast monthly. You cannot be the only person to have gone to Helsinki to get coffee from Guillermo Lomas from his roaster. I guarantee it can't just be you.
That's true, but I wasn't wearing a Podcast badge, so nobody identified me. Perhaps next time we'll all meet. I'll be on table 5. It was really comfy. And I think I had some sort of like cardamom bun. So there you go. I'll see you guys all there next weekend. Nice. Please don't all sit on the same table. I'll get awkward.
I've booked my flights.
Okay, great.
So, listen, our episode this year is going to look slightly different than it had in previous years, because in previous years, we would lump in our favorite single cask nation bottling of the year, as well as our favorite non-single cask nation bottling of the year. But we already did that. Season 8, episode 19 was our favorite SCN and favorite non-SCN bottlings of the year. So we're not including that in this conversation. However, I have poured one of my favorite bottlings of the year. I have that at the ready, so I hope that you two may join me in a little whiskey as we go along. But I do have the list of things that we will be discussing today, and in no particular order. We want to discuss what our favorite episode or our favorite conversation of the year was, our favorite event of the year, whether we attended it or hosted it, or if you want to do both, that's fine. I think we sort of mixed it up last year as well. And Jason, that was a new entry by you last year of favorite event.
Well, as Jessica has already suggested, we're out in the world, we're traveling around, we're globetrotting, we're showing up at different spots. Might as well talk about it.
Might as well talk about it. Please don't be too enthusiastic for sharing the nice things we've done this year. Just because you didn't make coffee in Helsinki.
I'm going to talk about my experience getting coffee with you in Glasgow. Jessica Lomas.
This full name checking is really weird. It's like my mum's here, but I don't remember her looking quite like you.
This started when I saw you in Scotland in November, and I don't know why it started, but now the rhythm of your name, I can't say Jess. It's too pitched. I need Jessica Lomas.
It does, Ross. It's got a rhythm to it, right?
Right. That's what I keep finding. She hates it, so I really have to stop in 2025.
It's so weird because it's like It's nobody ever, like an everyday occurrence. There's only really two occasions where people use your name. One is probably some sort of like parent-based figure, or you're being really properly bollocked by somebody. Or actually, maybe there's a third. Is when you're in a shop and they're desperately trying to sell you a thing. Like, yes, I know my name. Please stop using it. Congratulations, you've remembered it from 10 seconds ago. And you really have no excuse. I mean, you've known my name for many years now. So, yeah. It's extremely unsettling.
I don't know. I think being in business with a Joshua for 13 years who doesn't go by Josh, to now have a Jessica who does go by Jess, feel it's shifting on me.
It's weird because I would never have introduced myself to you by my full name. I've always been Jess.
Never. No. Correct.
Whereas Joshua is definitely Joshua.
Though, like, Jason, you've changed your name to J-Dog just this past week.
That's actually Raw Dog. You keep mispronouncing it.
Oh, we just call him all the initials and it just becomes Jellin.
Jellin. Jellin with Yellin.
That's definitely his 90s beat name.
All right. Sorry if I derailed this, Jess. No. I apologise.
God, where have we got to? So nice events that we've all been at. What else is on our incomplete list of things?
The most notable distillery that has grabbed your attention this year for whatever reason that you want to insert. A new addition, and this was a suggestion by Jason, which again, I got to keep giving you props, Jason, and I'm running out of props to give, but here we are. And I like what you said about this. You said this would be a nice callback to Extra Extra. And so the idea is...
the bygone years.
Yeah, right, of bygone years. And so what's a notable news story that's captured your attention? And I would argue we should try to not go too dark with our...
or too deep.
But before we get into this, I've got a serious question for Jess.
Okay.
In last episode, Jess, something incredibly important happened. We issued you a challenge. And the challenge was for you to watch a movie that starred America's favorite Scotsman, Roddy Piper. You were meant to watch They Live. And I want to know, here we are, 365 days later. Have you watched America's They Live?
I'm going to be honest, I looked for approximately 20 seconds for somewhere really easy to watch it. And when it wasn't instantly apparent, I just dismissed it out of hand for the rest of time.
Oh my gosh.
But mainly because I really think if I actually start watching movies and I'm able to enjoy these conversations with you, I'll have wrecked some sort of dynamic that we have with us, which is you two discuss a film I've never seen or heard of, and then you look incredulous at me and say, I can't believe you've not seen this. And I say, I'll put it on the list. And the list is really just a pile behind the sofa that I never get to. But I also like to upset Jason by making references to movies that are extremely old that I shouldn't know about, and yet I do. For example, I am very much into the Marx Brothers. And Duck Soup and Blazing Saddles and things like that. So things that are well beyond my generation. I like to just trip him up a little bit. I feel like that was a conversation we must have had at Glasgow Festival.
I will be honest, when you and I are chatting away and a movie reference comes out, Airplane. In talking to you, I didn't make an Airplane reference that was the most obvious. It was one of those, I picked the wrong week to stop huffing glue.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's no point saying that to Jess. We'll just be 20 minutes later explaining where that comes from. Yeah. And then Jess made it clear that she knew the movie Airplane.
You know Airplane?
Like, this doesn't make any sense. How do you know Airplane when you don't know Goonies?
How do you know early 80s comedy? This is amazing.
Well, I know stuff that's much older. Like, we used to not even watch, we used to listen to like the Marx Brothers. They had a radio show that was based on a lawyer's firm. I seem to remember it's called like Flywheel, Shyster and Flywheel. I've spent a lot of my childhood in cars listening to cassettes of like Round the Horn and the Navy Lark. Like, I am actually an extremely old person. I just have a big hole in my modern pop reference knowledge. We have a friend in Sweden who is continually confused that I understand all of his music references because they're all like 70s and 80s music references. Mm-hmm. And he gets really upset that I know them. He says things like, "Wow, you really are old." It's the whiskey, it keeps me young.
It's worth paying very close attention to Jess in 2025 just to see where these cultural touch points remain. But all right, let's start on the whiskey stuff. Where are we on the whiskey stuff?
Yeah.
What's the first thing we want to talk about?
Well, I initially, I wrote my little list here, and of course I put favorite episode as the number one, but I almost feel as if that's the last one that we should maybe touch on. Yeah. And so fine. I thought it might be good, and Jason, I like you said, let's talk about whiskey stuff. Let's talk about whiskey stuff. And Jess, you are a lady of the female sort. And,
oh my God.
And because do I not say it that way? A female woman?
I just got my finger hovering right over the HR button. She's not quite out of the office yet. Go for it. Because Jason and I are gentlemen, we would like you to go first. What is the most notable distillery of the year for you? And why?
I feel like this question has been designed just for Jason to wax lyrical about a distillery he's waxed lyrical about previously. Anyway, Jess, please.
See if we can trip him up, like the episode where we picked our top whiskies and I just decided to gazump Joshua to the line. Well, so most notable, I guess, two of them, this maybe is tied in a little bit with the episodes of the podcast that we have done. I have really been excited. There's been a few more little flourishes on social media from the boys at Kythe, who have got bits more kit coming in. So that's definitely one that I'm keeping an eye on. Obviously, we're a long way off trying liquid from Johnny and Angus and their crew, but that's quite fun to see it happening. I really think, honestly, and this is really, listeners, you can write in and complain, but I think obviously this year it has to be Ardnamurchan, not just because they fed us and gave us somewhere to sleep, which is, that's always nice. Thanks, Carl, for not making us sleep.
That was very nice.
That was very nice.
I'm continually delighted to drink things that they put out. And that might seem like a very lazy, how do I round things up, but I just really enjoyed new Sauternes, some Midgie. Yeah, see, watch me go. That was a spoiler for the listeners, by the way. The Midgie. I have enjoyed revisiting our Ardnamurchan. I've enjoyed maybe some Ardnamurchan cask samples we had in that big bundle in the office. They're just, doing really nice things. And I'm really hoping that Santa will bring me that incredibly nice watch and bottle of 10-year-old Ardnamurchan.
Oh my gosh, I want that watch so badly. So badly.
So if Connell has any discount coupons,
tell our listeners and Jason about the watch.
Oh my God, Jason, honestly, you and social media in 2025, we're going to have to do something about this. So Ardnamurchan have done a collaboration with a watch company called Marlowe, who are a British watch company. And they've made a very nice watch that has some features that are connected in and out of the whiskey, and it comes with a bottle of the 10-year-old. It's just like a really nice concept. I'm really into whiskey brands who come up with nice partnerships and stuff that I can get behind. Recently, Glenfiddich have partnered with F1, Formula One. Like that's not achievable for me unless Santa can really jam an F1 car down my chimney, which please don't, because I'll make a horrible mess. It's a nice partnership that's not necessarily relevant to me. So I'm always interested to see brands that I have a very close affinity to, although I do to Glenfiddich. I like to see them doing nice, fun things with other British companies, or partnerships that are relevant and make sense. And they can be serious ones like the watches, or Ardnamurchan have also done the one with Smedge, which I just think is still very funny. So, they remain my distillery that I continually creep on Instagram.
Yeah, I was very happy to collect my Midgie bottles when we were at the distillery. I will get my obvious Balmenic reference out the way nice and early. That's, nice revelation for me from January through November. Here we are posting this in December. See what other Balmenics We can find along the way that old worm tub. Action is very exciting, very delicious.
Do you know, I was at a festival this weekend, which we can come back to in a minute, in a classic old put.
I would love for you to come back to that.
And I had your Balmenic front and centre on the table, and a gentleman strolled up to me and he said, "Oh, they're one of the Worm Tub distilleries, aren't they?" And I was like, "Are you being paid by one Jason Johnson Yellen to come up to the table and say things?" I said, "Is the next thing that's going to come out of your mouth, I'm really very much into a Balmenic." And he said, "Do you know what, I am?" And I was like, "Oh, I feel this is a Jeremy Beadle moment. I'm on camera here. Jason's in the next room watching this, feeding it in through an earpiece." So there you go. Turns out there are more people like you.
It's a Sisyphus moment.
I was just about to say that, Jess. I'm starting to hear from Balmenic fans who are reaching out to say, "I'm so glad to hear you champion this." So as an example, Bill Myers, who listens to the podcast, regular listener of the podcast, Bill Myers texted me to say, listening to you guys talking about Balmenic here. And he talked about the Balmenic that he poured for you, Joshua, at his house.
Oh, wow. You know, when I was at his house, he poured me so many, and that Balmenic absolutely stood out. Right?
Incredibly generous, right? Yeah. Known for his generosity when you show up at his place, and outside that as well. But yeah, I was blown away. I didn't know Bill had my phone number, and I got a text from him about Balmenic. So
he has everybody's phone number. That's it. You mentioned something, boom, he's on you. I don't know how he does it. He works magic, that man.
Yeah, this is definitely a thing. Yeah. So Balmenic regular listeners, this is not a surprise. This is me trying not to belabor the point.
Have you got a
Balmenic
fanzine
definitely gets
set
a
up?
mention.
I feel like, have you got a fanzine set up yet? You know, that you guys, because obviously nobody who's a fan of Balmenics on social media, so you have to communicate like analog. You will write chain mails to each other.
Old school, like DIY, punk rock show, zine.
Yeah, when I was at school, there was like one of these. It was rumored to have been started by, and it wasn't true, but it was rumored to have been started by a very famous TV show called Blue Peter. And it was one of these, you had to when you got the letter, you had to photocopy it and send it on to 7 other people, like really old
Chain
school
mail,
spam mail.
right?
But you had to go, we didn't have a photocopier. I actually made my parents take me to the local garage where you could use a photocopier, you could pay for it. And then, sent it on to some other people. And Blue Peter had to come out being like, "Look, we did not start this, we are not encouraging it." But it's like a proper, that's how spam mail was done in the 80s and 90s, Podcast listeners, if you're very, very young. So that's basically how the Balmenic bunch, what do you call yourselves? What's a collective of Balmenics?
The Balmenic bunch. Oh, I like that. There's the Torrimore 4 and then the Balmenic bunch.
Yeah, God. And they're all in the weird corner wearing anoraks.
This is awesome. Yeah, I'm going to second, and I think all three of us are going to say the same thing in today's episode, but you know, already being a fan of Ardnamurchan and getting to revisit it for the first time in a decade, that was really wonderful. The hospitality from Carl was absolutely second to none. That felt very warm, very welcoming. You know, getting to go down the beach a little bit, down the jetty, share some drams.
Oh, yeah.
It's that type of experience. And one of the reasons I want to circle back to it is, as we select casks for the nation, we're always connecting the people we believe in with the nation. And so, you know, clearly we'll circle back to this a little bit later today, but, you know, our friends at Westland, our friends at Virginia Distillery Company, right? When we then bring out casks from them, we're taking what we love about those distilleries and the people at those distilleries and putting it in front of the nation. And I think Ardnamurchan is absolutely one of those. I think Milk and Honey has absolutely been one of those and will remain one of those. And so I feel we're not just selling whiskey. We're doing our very best to connect distilleries to whiskey fans. Yeah. That's really important to me. And so to be at Ardnamurchan, to be with the people from Ardnamurchan, to stand next to the stills at Ardnamurchan, hugely, hugely important. And I will rest my case there.
He's back down to writing things for the Balmenic. He's like suggestions for, I've been to recent distillery visits and I think we should do.
Dear Balmenic Bunch, please join me.
P.O. Box.
I love the fact that we've both headed Joshua off at the pass, where he's like, now what am I going to say about Ardnamurchan?
Right, so, like, I think all the listeners know that my love for Ardnamurchan runs so deep. It's entered my bloodstream. I have a new blood type.
All right.
I used to be O positive.
I'm pouring Ardnamurchan right now. Please continue.
There you go. And that's what I'm pouring. I've got my Ardnamurchan Sauterne cast release, which was my favorite non-SEN bottling of the week. But like I said, my blood type went from O positive to Ardnamurchan positive. That's how much I love this distillery. But because I didn't want to put the obvious thing down in this particular listing, I went for something else. I went, and Jason, you're going to hate me. Jess, I think you'll give me a pass because you're much kinder than Jason is. But
Okay.
That is true. I'm not going to disagree with that.
It's true. I've chosen 3. Just hear me out.
Checks watch.
Famously slagged off for doing this.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely,
turning up and
Jess,
ruining
but-
the episodes, and yet
Yep.
here we are. Okay.
I'm going to
sure,
make-
we'll hear your 3.
I'm going to make this really quick. So earlier this year, Jason, you and I went to Leith. We were in Scotland. We went to Leith, and we
Absolutely.
were taken to the Port of Leith distillery. A distillery.
Absolutely. That's a good
right?
call.
There you
Yep.
go. Thank
I
you.
approve this message.
Built on the coast. They didn't have much land to build a sprawling distillery. So what do you do when you don't have much land and you're on the coast of a city there? Well, you build vertical. So that was the first vertical distillery I'd ever been in, and I can only think of 2. There's the Port of Leith distillery, and then Mackmyra in Sweden, right?
Uh-huh.
Are there
I
any
think
others?
there is only 2. No, I think that's it.
Oh, there's a listener shouting a name at the ham radio right now. This is...
It's nice to not be the one in the car shouting, though.
But just to be there and understand the distillery, not just from the mouth of your tour guide, but from level to level to level, understanding the process, which I think for people who are newer to distilleries and understanding how a distillery operates, at least for my brain, I think it does a good job of compartmentalizing each step and putting it into an obvious, series. So I really, really enjoyed that. And the owners there are lovely. Obviously when we went, they weren't even running spirit yet, so I can't say anything about their spirit, but their sherry was quite nice.
Yeah, their sourcing was excellent.
Right.
They're also known for their gin.
Yeah.
They produced a different spot. Yeah,
Linda
really
Wright.
excellent. That's a good call, Josh.
Yeah.
I'm curious where you go with 2 and 3 here.
So number 2, I'm going to stay within a similar geography, and I've got to go with Holyrood. Right? Again, now you've been there
I
before.
nearly said Holyrood in my
But they're daring. They're doing things that most other distilleries are not doing, playing with yeast, playing with different barley varieties and roasting levels. And their inaugural release was unlike most, if not any other Scotch whiskey that I've had before. And it was almost like the Baller, the St. George's, the American St. George distillery Baller release. So floral and light, yet nice malty backbone. Like, I just thought that was super cool. And I think about the logistical trouble they have being in the heart of downtown Edinburgh and how that might affect their production. So yeah.
2 words that have never been put together before, happening live on the podcast.
I really enjoyed that. Downtown Edinburgh. I was going to leave it. I was just going to let that happen.
Well, it's not downtown, but it's within the city, right?
Yeah, there is no downtown.
Is there no downtown?
There's Newtown.
Well, we just don't use downtown in Scotland. So
what
it's just
do
not
you
a
say?
thing. Town centre is what we say.
Oh, town center. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Town centre.
Oh, town center.
Or city centre.
City centre.
Centre is kind of what we say
Centre.
instead of downtown.
Okay.
Moving on.
All right. Okay. And then finally, I have got to give significant props to Wild Turkey. This year they released a 15-year-old that I think was not only priced really well for about $275, so like if you could find it at retail pricing, because bourbon bros are going to bourbon bro and make the pricing crazy. But that 15-year-old rivals the old cheesy gold foil bottling, which is, I think,
high price.
Not just one of the best bourbons ever produced, but one of the best whiskeys ever produced. And this is within that standard of quality. Just absolutely remarkable stuff. So there you go. Those are my three. One because of whiskey, one because of design, and one because of just innovation and daring to create new whiskeys. There you go.
Well, since we've allowed Joshua 3, can I have an honourable mention?
Hey!
I wasn't going to be that guy, but I feel like
the first segment shouldn't be the entire episode.
He's popped his head above the parapet, so I'll follow. I think also the other honourable mention, and thinking of new releases and nice things that just came through my door the other day, is Ardnahoe.
Ah, yeah.
So they had a very exciting inaugural release, which I think there's still a little bit of that percolating. And I have sent, I really think I should be on commission from the whiskey shop at this point, because I have sent so many Americans to the whiskey shop to buy it. It's unreal. But they have just dropped a new one, which I have down here, which I can show you too. But obviously the podcast listeners will have to Google it when they're not driving. They've just launched something that's
colour
called,
for them, Jess.
Yeah, they've done one called Infinite Lock, and they have also just dropped, that came through the door, the Ardnahoe Society little bottling here. It's also still a 5-year-old, and I don't think it's a single cask, but maybe now I've said that it is. You're right, it's not a single cask, it's a mixture of Oloroso and PX, but it is bottled at cask strength, so it's 59.1%. And I'm extremely excited to get stuck into this, because everything I've had of Ardnahoe so far has really impressed me, whether that was the inaugural release. There was a single cask at the Fashil, which was delicious. So I'm really impressed, and I feel like they're kind of quietly turning out really high quality, delicious liquid, not particularly rushed, and usually at fairly sensible pricing too. So it's pretty tasty. For anybody who hasn't tried Ardnahoe yet, Sweet Scott and I have decided it's like the perfect combination between a Kilchoman and a Bowmore.
Oh, wow.
So it's got a bit of sweetness and a little bit of, there is a smoky thing happening there, but it's not maybe as aggressive as some of the South Isla distilleries can be presented. I think they're just really classy, and it's nice packaging. And you all know how I feel about fonts, and I think it's ticking all my boxes.
Yeah, I had
two Ardna somethings.
I had the inaugural release, and then I had the inaugural release in a penicillin cocktail that Michael Nolan made for me. And it was delicious both ways. Yeah.
Lovely, jubbly. Yeah. I had the inaugural this year at the Bon Accord in Glasgow. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Was very impressed by it. Yeah. There we go. Gosh, we have every distillery named has been fantastic.
And they all start with Ard. Ardmore, anybody? Okay. So let's move on. Can we officially move on to the next category?
100%.
I would love to hear from you. And this time we're going to start with Jason. I would love to hear from you, Jason, your favorite event that you either attended or presented at.
Oh boy, this is always the fun one, because you get to piss off the people whose festival you don't mention, and that's always tough. I may also piss off the person who wasn't at one of the festivals when he was meant to be. That might get a little tricky and dicey. I'm trying to think, where have I been this year? What have I done this year? Clearly, I have to mention Fog City Social. I think I already waxed lyrical about Fog City Social on an episode of the podcast this year. One of those events I'd heard about. Steve Hawley said very complimentary things about it. And so showing up for the first time, pouring next to Impex, our US importer in San Francisco, the city in which they are based, was a ton of fun. Well organized, very knowledgeable group came out to support Fog City Social. Mayer does a terrific job of co-running that with the rest of his team. Really tremendous. And I will be there. I've already committed to this year's event. There's little talk about when it will actually happen, so I'm not going to say any more details there. But looking forward to get back there. Always good to get back to San Francisco as well, see the people there. And then, obviously, if I can have a number two, getting to pour next to Jess and Sweet Scott at Glasgow's Whisky Festival. And the thing that most excited me, most made me happy, besides the two very kind people that I was pouring next to, besides the very kind Nation members and podcast listeners who showed up to say hello, was seeing people come in the door and come straight to our table to get access to everything we had on the table. And we ran out of one bottling, the older Glengarry, in the first hour of the first session, because people knew to come to us. You know, we were just pouring so fast for people who came straight to us. And I know that next year's Glasgow Whisky Festival will have even more people heading straight to the single cask Nation table. So to see what Jess and Sweet Scott in Dore have built in pouring at that event year after year was magnificent. And I enjoyed celebrating that on the day. So thanks to you bunch for your efforts in Glasgow, Jess.
Oh, thanks. I'm thinking next year I might leave like a kind of Hansel and Gretel style gingerbread crumb through the festival, and we'll hide somewhere really far away to reward people for coming and finding our table. I tell you, I think we probably did talk about this in the episode, our previous episode. I've done Glasgow Whisky Festival in various formats for quite a long time now, and I have never gone through liquid like that. It was insane. The fact that we were out of liquid a solid hour each session before the end of it was
amazing,
quite ridiculous. So fear not, next year I shall return with more liquid. Hopefully we'll have had a whole series of new releases to play with by then.
Oh, for sure.
Lovely stuff. Just out of curiosity, was the number of people in the 2024 Glasgow's Whisky Fest the same as 2023? And therefore you're just getting more attention?
I think so. And I think the second session was slightly smaller. I remember one of the volunteers saying, but I think we're kind of in the same ballpark. So
wow. There you go.
Huge festival.
That's saying something. Yeah.
With multiple rooms to wander from room to room, experiencing the very best that the industry has to offer. So, we more than held our own that day. That was a really special feeling.
It was tough. Okay, so
right,
if you have, if you've nominated Glasgow, I will not add to that. I will tell you. And one of the reasons why it sounds like, I don't know if it's coming across, dear listener, I feel like I've accidentally smoked 1,000 cigarettes this weekend. I'm really wheezy. I can promise you I haven't touched a single one, hand on heart. I have just come back from Kendal Whisky Festival, which is down the Lake District. So that was our first time pouring there, but I've known Phil and Dwayne for a little while. In fact, if you've ever heard our Project 89 stories about queuing outside Bowmore all night to get a bottle of 89 single cask Bowmore, I actually was in the queue next to Dwayne and his family in the car park all the way back in 17, 18 when that was released. So I've known both of them a little while. Phil has an incredible pub in Kendal called the New Union. Phil is definitely a whiskey geek and lover of all whiskies. His bar has a phenomenal selection of whiskey behind it. But the other thing that draws lots of other people into his bar is Phil is a massive collector of Belgian beer, which is not what you would necessarily expect to find in the Lake Districts. And I knew it was a pub I had to visit when Billy Abbott said, you need to go to the New Union and drink some Belgian beer. And if Billy tells me, I don't have to do it. Doesn't need to say it twice. So when the guys...
I imagine he and Mark Watt have shut down that pub a few times.
Yeah, I can imagine. When Phil and Dwayne asked me if I wanted to take part, I said yes, of course. So we were pouring in Kendal Town Hall in the centre of the town. It's a lovely old Victorian building. And that had 3 rooms. We were upstairs and we had next to us the lovely guys at Tomatin. And then there was a whole bunch of other really fun people in the room. Upstairs with me were Libby and Seb, joined on the Saturday from Glasgow Whisky Distillery. There was Declan and the esteemed David Brodie from Bunnahabhain himself, made it off the island and was pouring across from us. I'm going to do an incomplete list. Somewhere at the very back of the room was Carl, and we just kept telling people to look for the extremely tall American guy in an orange hoodie. They couldn't miss him. There was Amy from Filey Bay, and Joe was there as well. So yeah, it was, and even David Stirk was behind us with his books and some offerings. Our old warehouse pals Claxtons were there. So it was a proper who's who in the room. Up the front, and we spent all weekend taking the piss out of them and being jealous, were Billy with his book and Jason's pal Dave Broom, also with his book. And they were the only 2 people in the room who had chairs. And we spent quite a lot of the session looking at them sat on chairs being like, I'd quite like a chair. So when Dave went off...
they were the only 2, Dave Broom's one of the ones with a chair. Who's the second?
Billy was sat next to him.
Billy Abbott.
Both with
Billy
chairs.
had a chair
Abbott,
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when Dave went off to host one of his masterclasses, I went and sat down and pretended to be Dave for a bit.
Did you sell any books while you were pretending to be Dave?
I sat reading his book. I think that's a form of marketing or something. Yes. And then there was 2 more rooms of whiskey downstairs, which was crazy. So Alex was there from Lochlee. And there's Ben with Annandale. Yeah, and Mark was there with Wolfburn. And we were super busy. I did not have any time to go and drink any whiskey. Occasionally Chris would disappear off and Sweet Scott would come back with a nice whiskey for me. But yeah, we were really busy the whole weekend, so that's nice. Slightly different scale of people, but it's also a much smaller town hall than Hamden here. But yeah, it meant that we had a lot more time
Kendal.
Yeah, it meant we had a lot more time to kind of do fun interacting and talking to people and talking about apparently abnormal people who like worm tubs, who readily identified by my table. Yeah, and then of course there was a lovely kind of after party back in the pub with Phil, where he said to me, "Come to my cellar," which, if you know Phil, that's sort of only mischief comes,
isn't it? Come to my cellar.
Well, it's the kind of invitation that only mischief comes. So we went as a group. Like I say, I followed Billy, so I knew I was in safe hands, and Dave and Chris. We went, and Rocky, who is one of Billy's colleagues at Whiskey Exchange, I think. We went into the cellar, and it's honestly the most crazy selection of Belgian beer you've seen outside of Belgium, and probably even in Belgium, if I'm honest with you. It was
wow. Oh, this sounds rocking.
So there's my upsell for Kendal. Come for the whiskey, stay for the Belgian beer.
I love it.
It was really nice. What was really interesting about this festival, and why I'm really touting it as very underrated, is that people had travelled quite a long way to come to Kendal. So Kendal, for those of you who don't know the geography of the UK, is in the Lake District, so that's kind of northwest bit of England. But there were big whiskey groups of people. The guys from the Southport Whiskey Club were there. There was a whole bunch of people come from Liverpool. At one point, I thought I was being overtaken by people from Birmingham, including Ben down at Annandale. And then I realised it was all okay, because Ian Allen was across the hall from me with his colleague Zach, who is a proper Leeds lad. And then we found all the people from Bradford, so it was all okay. There wasn't many of us, but there were some Bradford people there. Yeah, so it was just really fun. I was really interested to see the mileage people had gone to come to the festival. I think Glasgow attracts a lot of local people and a lot of people from Scotland. And it was just really interesting to me to be in a different location with people from a really quite big spread of England had come all the way. So I think that's a testament to Phil and Dwayne. And yeah, I think for this year, for all the festivals and events that I've done, I have really enjoyed all of them. But Kendal, I think, was a really nice way for me to kind of close out 2024, and somewhere circulating on the internet, somewhere, there is a picture. So Kendall have a dram of the festival, and the favourite dram of the festival, whoever wins it, a bottle of that is poured into a giant Glencairn, like the one that you could wear as a fishbowl over your head. And then it's passed around the pub, and everybody has to drink out of it. And in a post-COVID situation,
COVID never happened.
That really is incredibly
It didn't start in Wuhan. It started in Kendall.
But luckily, I was press ganged into it, and the reason I did it was because the dram of the festival was Bunnahabhain 21-year-old, and you can't say no to that. So there is a video I've seen, a video and a photograph of me being past this glass and drinking it, but I am scowling at it because the whole time my brain was like, think of the diseases in here. But the other half of my brain was going, delicious Bunnahabhain. So if you find that picture, people of the podcast, I'm not really furious about the situation, but I'm just explaining why my face looks like that. So
the person who gets to drink the last dram at the bottom of that fishbowl Glencairn.
Oh, gosh.
It's very confusing as an experience because
right there.
You're handed it as if it was a beer and you should chug it. You're handed it as you don't chug whiskey. You're right. It was handed around everybody who'd been exhibiting. So in theory, we were all professionals, right? And you put it as it's coming to your face. You're like, must not chug. Just take a small sip. But it's also quite a long way to lift up towards you. The liquid is coming at you for quite a long time. It's very Yeah. Anyway, so
I feel like in a post-COVID world, you could fill the fishbowl Glencairn, but then give everybody an empty Glencairn and let them just fish a little dram from the communal fishbowl. Maybe I'm just thinking of the old punch bowl tradition in Englandshire and Scotlandshire.
Weird flashbacks of growing up, and I felt like there should have been a minister wiping it like it was some sort of communion glass.
Right. Yeah.
Between each one.
And then a Ritz cracker on your tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we didn't.
A mirror
have
under
Ritz
your
cracker.
chin, right?
A mirror under your chin.
Is that what they do? When you go to church, they put a mirror under your chin and put a round matzah on your tongue, and then you say, spectacles, testicles, wallet, watch. Is that how it goes?
Oh, yeah. Spot the person who's never been to a communion. No, at least not where I was brought up.
He's clearly
or
read
literally
about
any church I've ever been to.
So Joshua, your events of 2024.
How many mirrors were at your
Apparently
events?
going to church was one of them.
There were no mirrors. It was like sitting Shiva for each one. Right. Just words. So my runner-up event was Jason's number one event of 2023, and that was Premier Drams at Jack Rose in DC. Right, Jason, you were gallivanting somewhere. I don't remember where you were gallivanting.
I was at the wedding of Andrew Miller, the Champagne of People.
That's right. So
in Boise, Idaho, with my wife, of all people. I travelled with my wife in 2024.
Amazing.
We might never see that again.
You've done that at least once this year. Did we not have a hostage situation where you were claiming it because you were at some tenuous connection to your wife's work? Or you'd broken into a hotel?
That was the second time I travelled with my wife, correct? Baltimore. I was in Boise with my wife. I was in Baltimore with my wife. That's it. Those are the two trips. End of story.
Do you only travel
to places beginning with a B?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as a member of the Balmenic bunch. Oh, this is so good. I've always wanted to be a member of something. That is a joke. Carrying on, Joshua.
Yeah, so Premier Drams, my first experience, and I can see why you wax lyrical about this event. It's
cheers.
2 floors, but I shouldn't say that. There was 2 floors, but I think there was also something going on at Imperial. Is that?
Yep, 2 buildings.
Yeah, 2 buildings. And I was in Jack Rose proper, but in the top floor, pouring next to
beautiful
Jared Card, which I think that's where you were last year as well, right? Top floor.
Indeed.
And so the day started off meeting Jared Card, set up the bottles. He said, "Hey, you want to go get a slice of pizza?" Yeah, sure. Let's go get a slice of pizza. So we travel across the street.
Regional pizza, Jess.
Regional pizza, right? So there's God's Own Pizza, which is, of course, New Haven. Then there's the atrocity that is Chicago. There is the greasy mess that is New York. But then there is the full-sized 12-pound baby that is the slice of DC pizza, which one slice is in a full-size pizza box.
Yep.
It was the size of my torso. Like, it was just enormous.
Yep.
Regional pizza.
And it's for $5. Used to be $4.
This was no, they've increased the price. This was $7.50.
Oh, that's inflation / post-COVID. That's a disaster.
Right, thanks, Obama.
I would not give them the money.
So I promptly ate 1/10 of that slice, and then people started flowing in, and I don't think since the moment those doors opened, I don't think I saw Jared the entire time because I couldn't look to my left. He was to my left. I couldn't look to my left because I was bombarded with new people, with Nation members, with Podcast listeners. And at any given time, we were 4 to 5 people deep.
Yep.
And that was just, and the conversations were great. And sometimes, you know how you do these events, right? And you have conversations with people, and the people behind them are usually doing the eye rolling, the looking at the watch, the should I go over here and come back kind of thing. Everybody was really patient. Everybody was cool, waiting their turn, wanting to know about our whiskeys. And it reminded me, now granted, I was rarely behind the table at the Jubilee events, but I was with the people in the crowd at Jubilee events. And the people were similar. They were patient. They were there not just to taste the whiskeys, but to get an understanding of the whiskeys and the distilleries. And I loved that. That's what whiskey is about to me. And I just thought that was really special. And I could start going on with an incomplete Joshua Hatton list of the number of people I met and the number of people who was like, oh, can I get a picture? Which is always weird when people want a picture with me. I just don't get that. But
this was why I didn't name drop Matt Bishop at Glasgow's Whiskey Festival, because then you have to go on beyond that. So I didn't do it. I did not name drop Matt Bishop on purpose. Joshua?
Uh,
Thank you for not name dropping Dr. Matt Bishop.
I did not name drop Matt Bishop. I'm telling you that.
There's a nice picture we should share to Facebook if I didn't already of me press ganging a whole bunch of guys from the Watcher of Life. There was also Keith Duncan there and a whole gang of them.
Yeah.
There's a nice picture of Jason with them before things got really cray at the table. I think there might even be photographs of liquid still in a bottle at that point.
Do we know if Bishop is in the Balmenic bunch? Well, he's a bee.
I'm sure he'll tell us.
Well,
there you go.
He definitely will let us know, but I don't have to hand. Maybe I do. There is also, he has created whiskey playing cards.
Mm-hmm. You mean these cards right here, Jess?
Mine are in my dining room because there you go. Yep, those are the cards I use to play gin rummy with my kids.
Hey,
so
you're not a Rummy Cube family?
Oh, what?
Rummy Cube?
Don't know.
Israeli game. Look it up.
Oh, okay. No, I don't know Rummy Cube, and I will check it out. Israeli game. Okay.
Handily on the back of here, Matt has listed all the distilleries, so I don't need to do some sort of Darren Brown trick leafing through the deck of cards really quickly. Balmenic is not listed, so I'm going to say that means he's not in the Balmenic bunch.
Oh, wow.
He couldn't get the rights.
He knows how to email in to tell us otherwise.
I tell you what, that's a conscious decision to not include Balmenic. Just putting that out there.
So, all right, top festival for Joshua,
so top
event.
Top event.
I hope. I'm crossing fingers here. You're about to name the one that I didn't. I'm sending you mental thought waves here, because if you don't say this one, I'm going to have to circle back to say it because it has to be acknowledged.
Oh, look at that. He's got a Thrusk. He went for a Thrusk in his card deck, but not Balmenic.
aggressive.
Someone's a fetishist. Okay. The one I'm going to mention is not the one you want me to mention because I don't bow to you, Jason.
Okay.
I mentioned my own.
Mental.
Yeah, there you go. And I mentioned this one because it was quite personal for me. The last week I was in Chicago doing an event with the Warehouse Liquors, and we had just bottled a single cask of Black's Boat Bridge, 12 years in fresh bourbon. And for anybody who knows Warehouse Liquors or has listened to us over the years talk about Gene, the owner, this is a guy who arrives to work at 4:30 in the morning and leaves work at 2 in the afternoon, is in bed by 6 p.m. and asleep by 8 p.m. Like, he works on a different, schedule, a different clock than we do. But he made the conscious decision to be a part of this event. And the last time he did that, Jason,
my gosh.
Yes, the last time he did that was 5 years ago when you and I were there, and we did a live podcast. There you go, with Mickey Heads. So, there have been 2 times when Gene had said, "I'm going to stay out later," and each time it was with Single Cast Nation. Though the first time was Ardbeg too. But here's the thing. So the event space is usually capped to 20 people, maybe 25. And this event had 50 people. We maxed out the room. We set it to 20, and then people were going crazy. The 20 tickets sold out in the first day within a couple hours. And so they released more tickets and then more tickets and then more tickets. And we got to 50 people. And Gene had said, "Look, now that I'm a keeper of the Quake, I'd really love to wear my keeper's kilt. Would you wear your kilt?" And so I wore my kilt, and we were 2 keepers doing a presentation of 5 Single Cast Nation bottlings. And then he did his own Glenfarclas through Glenfarclas. It was like an OB, but cask selected by him. And of course, there's all the beautiful people, right, from Chicago that we love. And here comes an incomplete Joshua Hatton list, right? It's
roll call.
It's the Nolans, of course, and Michael Bloom, and Gil Matar, and Eric Leader, and Mike.
What?
Mike Kanajibabian. I can never pronounce his last name, but there's a K in there and a J in there. The Ice Cream Man was there. Oh, dude, I gotta tell you about this. So I'm talking with the Ice Cream Man, and Michael Nolan's on the opposite side of the room, and his like elf ears must have perked because he heard me say, "Hey, Ice Cream Man." And he came and he walked over and he introduced himself. He's like, "I'm Michael Nolan." It was like, "Michael Nolan," and I'm the Ice Cream Man. Ice Cream Man. Like it was a meeting of the Padcost characters. I loved it. And just a couple more things about this again, which I think made this so incredibly special. So our distributor in Illinois is BC Merchants, run by Brian Sisk, hence BC. And he's 25 years in the business, and he's a veteran. He does not need to go out to any events. He came out to our event. He really supported it.
Very nice.
Which was lovely. And then finally, and this warmed my heart. So the event was on December 6th. The event was on December 5th, and my birthday was the 6th. And Kevin Obis, who's the local Impex rep for Illinois, and also a friend, I need to add. Once we were done with all of the whiskeys, he broke out a 7th bottling, which was an IB Lagavulin that he asked, months back, maybe last year, maybe the year before, I don't remember. He found the bottle and he's like, "Joshua, should I buy this?" And it was the Cask of Isla. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah, Cask Isla.
Cask Isla, that's it. No, you're thinking... No, that's the 80 Rattray you're thinking of. I'm thinking of the old ones. One had a green bottle, Was that one also called Cask Isla?
Maybe I'm not.
Okay.
100%.
Anyway, it was an older one, and the name is escaping me now. But he brought that to pour for all 50 people in the room.
Wow!
As a birthday gift to me, because Lagavulin is my favorite distillery, and that
Not for long.
not for long. Watch out,
top
Lagavulin,
five, top
Arden
10.
Merkins, bringing up the rear. And so there you go. How could that event not be my favorite event of the year? There you go.
Yeah, that's very cool. Very, very cool. This happens every time, right? We don't do bad events. We don't collaborate with bad people, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're all talking about personal connections that we have at all of these events. And as we're sitting here, we'd be remiss not to have a callback to Mike opening up the travel bar for us and having a private event on a Monday night. You talk about personal connection. My niece came to it.
That's right.
Who's not a whiskey drinker, came along with her buddy. We had the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society team in town. They came out to it as well. Mm-hmm. Like, we poured for customers behind the bar, right? The only bar shift you or I have ever worked in our life.
Oh shit!
Like,
man, that's a good one.
Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. And then with that in mind, I started thinking, we did the Zooms, right? And we did Zooms with the Nation. And listen, when you start to name your favorites, it's just not possible. And so I'm going to retire this category. As someone who introduced it last year, I retire it this year.
Yeah, but
speaking of retiring,
I like it. I think maybe we should just have it as a pick an event of note rather than pick your most favorite.
But they're all of note is the problem. This is me. I closed out the Ardnamurchan Merkin bottled for Jess's Global Markets. First fill bourbon barrel Ardnamurchan, just absolutely cracking.
Single Cask Nation bottling it. Yeah. So that's so spot on, Jason. And man, well, let me tell you one last thing about that event. We had gifted Mike from Travel Bar a 10-year-old wild turkey because he was about to he was celebrating 10 years in business.
Absolutely, yep.
And across the weekend of December 6th through December 8th, he threw a 10-year anniversary weekend bash. And that 10-year-old was the highlight bottling of that series. So, yeah, it's nice to
wonderful. Make
those connections. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Look at that. We call this work. It doesn't sound like it in these moments.
So let's move over to the notable news story, the one that captured your attention the most this year. And I'm going to lead this one. So we started with Jess leading it, then Jason, now myself. I gotta tell you, this was an interesting year for news. Mm-hmm. We could run through a series of weird news, disappointing news, scary news. But just like Michael Jackson of beer and whiskey writing fame, not that hee fame, always says, you can always say nice things. I'm gonna bring up a nice news story. And it all gets back to personal connections, and that is the January 4 announcement of Single Cask Nation joining the Artisanal Spirits portfolio. We led the year. Look at that. The biggest whiskey news of the year was us, and we led the charge. And here we are. 13 going on 14 years of business, and in 2024 we've had our biggest year yet, from the number of casks we bottled to the just to everything. And what a nice positive way to start what was a difficult year and ended up being a good year for Single Cask Nation, where some other companies had difficult or more trying years. And so staying on a positive note, it's that we joined the Artisanal Spirits Company portfolio. And people, I love this. People have stopped asking, are commiserations or congratulations in order. More and more people are saying, what a great move for you guys. And they're noticing the bottlings that we're putting out, the distilleries we're starting to highlight because we weren't able to do that before. And it felt really good. So there you go. That's my notable story of the year.
Yeah, I like it. Glasgow's Whisky Festival certainly had people coming up asking very knowledgeable questions about the whisky industry and how Single Cask Nation fitting within the ASC portfolio fit within that larger industry. I really appreciated the questions that were coming out. Jess, I've got one ready to go. I don't know if you want to continue this in order. I'm happy to give you the floor.
Happy to see if we've picked the same. I think it's pretty unlikely, but I am happy to see if you have picked the same.
Yeah, I'm going to stay close to my Scottish heritage, and I am going to focus on the scary and the negative on the heels of Joshua going down the positive path. I can't stop thinking about it, and I mean that most seriously. I look at McMira and the bankrupt notification there. I look at the more recent news for Waterford calling in the receivers. And I think in this current landscape, this current global condition for the industry, we're very lucky, I'm putting a positive spin on it, to have the nation, to have ASC behind us. And we need the nation more than ever. And we want to celebrate good whiskey with the nation more than ever. But we also want to lift up worthwhile distilleries with the nation at this time. And I'm going to say more on this, but I'm going to wait for another category to say more about this. But I pay very close attention to the McMira and the Waterford news, and I know we're going to be hearing more of it. We just had a meeting the other day where you, Joshua, brought up the Stoli news, right? The Stoli bankruptcy news from the very end of November. We're going to have to pay attention to these stories as 24 becomes 25. I will circle back to this in a later category. Jess, I will give you the floor.
Okay, so I want to add an addendum that when McMira made the announcement about the bankruptcy, it obviously was big news and very worrying news for a whole bunch of reasons. But that has been now resolved, and I feel like the whiskey industry and news reporters and Facebook and social media have done a really good job about being horrified and outcrying, this is 25 years of business. Nobody's actually bothered to follow up on that, which is that McMira has not shuttered. They have had a rejig and they have been bought out and they continue to produce liquid. Now, obviously, they are very sore after such a hurtful thing. But for those people who are on the inside and understand a bit more of the working of that company in particular, this is at least 6 years in the coming. This is not new news to McMira. And so whilst I feel like everybody has become an instant expert on Swedish whiskey and the state of play and the politics over there, there's actually quite a lot more involved in it. And nobody else seems to be reporting on it. They've just gone for the headline of McMira applies and administrators are appointed. The previous head of the board and the largest shareholder investor in the company has now purchased the company out. Right. There's been a few kind of rumours that maybe that's what he'd been looking for a while. But really, McMira hasn't gone bankrupt, and I think this will be the same for Waterford because they ran out of money. It's a cash flow situation. There is stock involved. And obviously McMira heavily runs on a model of there's a lot of people privately investing in casks there, so obviously that's extremely worrying if you have casks with a distillery and it goes under. What happens there? And I think that's a whole episode we could do on its own with whiskey investing and what happens to the money that you've given to a distillery. Because Sweden is a monopoly, the whole idea of purchasing casks from a distillery is even more complicated than it is here in Scotland, which I will not take up too much of our time discussing. So it's interesting to me that we all jumped on the bandwagon very quickly discussing what a terrible thing it is, which it is, but nobody's done the follow-up work. And I suspect we probably won't see a follow-up to Waterford either, who I think are hoping for some sort of a similar situation of a buyout, not for a complete dismantle and closure, because they also have a lot of liquid that they're sat on. So there is assets that can be raised there.
The reason I bring it up is, you look at, if you were looking from the outside, McMira seemed to be doing it, making it, right? Waterford seemed to have Marc Renier really leading a charge on lots of words. And then something is happening behind the scenes. Something is softening that. And if you can have two very public global distilleries have that falling down of the dominoes, think of the distilleries we're not hearing about, right? Think about the mom and pop distilleries who are working every day to keep their lights on and their doors open. Cash flow, of course, is a huge issue for all distilleries. And imagine you don't have the mouthpiece of a Marc Renier getting the spotlight on your distillery.
Yeah,
like there are significant challenges day in and day out.
Your point is so spot on here, right? Just here we are, we're going negative, but it makes me think of the news out of the US where I think it was Southern Glazers who laid off 3,000 employees, and the majority of them were employees who were focused on the craft whiskey portfolio within Southern. And think of, the 3,000 plus craft whiskey distilleries here in the U.S. as we go through these tougher spirits industry times. Yeah, it's tough to avoid the negative and easy to dwell on it. But Jess, I like your point as well, where, and this goes with any news outlet, big story, here's the bad news. But then they don't follow up with, oh, things have changed or things have turned around. Like it's, bad news is always sensational to read. It becomes viral. Good news isn't necessarily viral. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious with all of this build-up. Where did you take your direction with memorable news story, Jess?
Extremely weird counterpoint. So actually, I was thinking about trying to keep it light, and I'm glad that you and I have switched around on this. So I was thinking about the announcement kind of a couple of months ago about a distillery that we went to visit, and there was a podcast episode on. We went to visit the guys who are running the Cabrach up in Spaces.
Yes. Yep.
So they officially are underway. I think it's like the end of October-ish is their official announcement. And I just think it's a very interesting project. So if you've not listened to that episode of the podcast, I think it's well worth going back to hear what Jonathan and, of course, Alan were talking about. It's a social enterprise, and it's not just the concept of bringing a distillery to an area. It's the extra value added that I think will hopefully help these distilleries make it through these kind of like rocky times in the whiskey world. It's a social enterprise, and it's about bringing people and jobs and employment back to the Cabrach, which is that area of Speyside just outside Dufftown, which formerly had a lot of people living in, was decimated by a whole series of things like the war, with young men being called away to fight and not coming back home, and about industry and employment becoming very scarce where they were. And some of the stories that Jonathan told about, like watching the lights go out within the Cabrach area and not the houses, obviously, but then unoccupied, so the lights weren't coming on, really sort of resonates with me. Similar other projects, things like what they're doing up at Glenwivis, and they're also doing with Harris Distillery, who are absolutely smashing it this side of the pond. I don't know if you guys are watching them, but the idea of a social enterprise, it's more than just we are building a distillery. It'd be nice if some of you worked it. It's about active involvement of local community and how we get a more broad involvement other than just drinking whiskey, which I guess fits within the messaging of perhaps not just using whiskey as a slightly irresponsible tool, about it being able to generate good for the local community. So I'm really watching it with interest, because I really enjoyed going around up there and seeing the building, not only the building a distillery, it was very cool to be within the kind of foundations of the buildings before there was equipment, and obviously they've got a really knowledgeable team up there and a lot of people who are very interested in what's happening, and with Alan at the helm, I can't imagine it's off to a bad start. So I know they have a like a founders club if you want to get involved with that from the beginning. One of these kind of like you get involved in what do they call it, ground level, and then you get, after a certain period of time, you'll get access to their first bottle, and you've got your name on a plaque type scenario. So I think it's really cool, and in a world of uncertainty and some miserable stories such as some of the distilleries you've named, I think it's pretty cool that there are people who are still bold enough and with a purpose and a clear enough idea as to what they can bring to the world of whiskey, especially in Scotland, which is a very busy place. And I do wonder in 2024 and going forwards that for the people who are just starting now, do they really have a clear objective of what they can bring to a very crowded marketplace that's going to be different to what already exists here? So that's my slight, as a permanent pessimist, that's my slight question that I always have. But it's lovely to see projects like the Cabrach getting up and running and being, starting off something really cool for that area.
Yeah, I think you both bookended my story perfectly, so thank you for that.
There we go. All right. Do you want to introduce this one, Jason? Because this was your idea.
Yeah, if I can double back to what I was starting to move towards in the memorable news segment, is the Whiskey Advocate Top 20 list came out in early December, and we all looked at that to see who may have made it, who might we know on that list, and I could not have been happier to see both Westland and Virginia Distillery Company on that list. We tasted the wine cask Westland for a previous episode, and we celebrated what was happening at Westland. We also tasted the beer cask. We moved into the Gariana 9, and then the Virginia Distillery Company, we tasted a prototype of that when we were at the distillery together, Joshua, which would have been maybe August time, there or thereabouts. August, September. How does time work?
Yeah, and it was nice to see that bottling in a store shelf just last week. It's nice to get that little preview on the shelf. So
right, and when we tasted it, we said, this is so seasonal. Like, this is going to crush in its season. A gingerbread stout, Virginia Distillery Company offering. And so to see, and again, not just those bottles of liquid, not just those bricks and mortar American single malt whiskey distilleries, but the people who were behind those distilleries. And we name names all the time. Amanda's always the name we represent VDC. Anna's always the name we represent Westland. There's entire teams of people with them as well. But to see them be recognised on that list, huge achievement, well worth celebrating. And to have consumer eyeballs on a category in America that still needs ratification. We've harped on this in 2024 and nothing has come back from the TTB. I believe Steve Hawley is growing hair just so he can pull it out at his level of frustration with the government and this ratification here. We all want it. We all want to see this. We need to see this. Having a ratified category would make a ton of sense. And yet we wait into 2025. I'm not going to go negative. I'm going to stick to the positive. Having friends on the top 20 list who work diligently to make this industry better every single day. I celebrate, and I'm pouring because I gave my wine cask sample to Jess and we only tasted the gingerbread stout sample on site. I'm pouring Westland Gariana 9 to celebrate this achievement. And not just to put it in Jess's face. Jess, do you have any Gariana 9 over there in Glasgow?
Funnily enough, no.
Sorry.
What a sad state of affairs that is. And I don't even have any of that wine cask left because you gave us it as a sample. I think we drank it in an airport.
Hey, I'm glad to hear that. And again, right, just to speak very honestly, while I'm very, very happy the wine cask made it to the Whiskey Advocate list, I'm glad that resonated over there. I think the three of us are beer cask. We're Westland beer cask finish.
Team beer cask.
People. And I gave that sample to Jess as well, so I don't have any of that here.
I will say, in an honest, and I'm always happy to admit when I'm wrong, in an announcement mainly aimed at regular correspondent Florian Tausch, if there was anybody who was going to make me like red wine cask whiskies, of which he is a massive fan, Westland were going to have to be the ones to do it. And I do like it, but I know that if I had two of them in front of me, I would reach for that beer cask every day of the week.
Every day, yeah.
Which I do have a beer cask, but it's too far away from this mic for me to grab. And I know that if I try and make a swing for it, this will all go horribly wrong. So the lovely Anna did send one my way. So I'll just have to crack that open when we're done recording.
There you go. Celebrate the festive season and the Westlands achievements. So there you go. I celebrate those. That's my two highlights from that list. Whichever one of you two wants to take the floor next.
I have something very simple to say about this list. You know, for the past, I don't know how many number of years, the top three has been dominated by American whiskeys. And right, I mean, just last year we had Westland Garyana 8 in the number 3 position, and of course that was great to see, and plenty of
incredible achievement.
Great bourbon producers and so on. But as a lover of Scotch whiskey first and foremost, and a lover of Islay whiskeys, it's so nice to see that the top 3 spots were held by 3 Islay distilleries: Laphroaig, Bruichladdich, and in Lagavulin, in that order. However, as much as I liked the Laphroaig Elements 2.0, it was a good whiskey. It's a good whiskey. Elements 1.0 was a remarkable whiskey. And so I asked myself, is it that Laphroaig only submitted 2.0 and that won? And that's perfectly fine. But if they submitted 1.0 and 2.0.
Yeah, it's for releases in 2024.
Oh, so maybe 1.0 is 2023 and I've discovered it in 2024. But anyway, so that one surprised me a little bit. And whiskey number 2 was Bruichladdich 18-year-old. And I remember, Bruichladdich gets reborn. They release a 10-year-old, and then they released maybe an 18-year-old and a 22-year-old, and then all the age statements went away. And here we are living in a world again where Bruichladdich has age-stated whiskeys. So that was nice to see in number 2. And of course, Lagavulin 12-year-old, tough to beat in flavor, easy to beat in price. It's a bit high.
Lagavulin, your soon-to-be number 2 distillery.
Soon to be my number 2 distillery, right?
Maybe even lower if they continue with this pricing.
Hey, right? There you go. But there you go. Those are my 2 cents. The fact that not just Scotch whiskey takes the top 3, but Islay Scotch whiskey takes the top 3. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting when Jason shared that with us. I've just grabbed it here to have a look at because obviously there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that is not available for me to try in the UK, so I can really only comment on the ones that I know. I was kind of surprised that the Lagavulin 12 made it in. Of all the special releases they do, that the Lagavulin 12 just really, it does nothing for me. And I say that as somebody who is definitely an avid, consistent top 5 lover is Lagavulin, as you well know. There's something about the younger ones I just don't. I don't know what it is. If it's poured for me, I will willingly try it every time, but I would never rush out and buy it. The funny thing is that I think this one, the 2023 release, I think it was just on sale here in the UK for part of Black Friday Amazon deals. Here's a price that will make all our American audience and probably the Australian audience sick. It was on Black Friday deal on Amazon for £50.
Oh my God. And this one,
so £50, I would probably drink it. But
last year's 12-year-old.
But still, I mean, the fact that you can go from a 140-pound bottling or whatever it is in the UK to a 50 pounds, and there, look, she's got it in her hands.
Yeah, what is the regular pricing on it, Jess? It's $170 for the Lagavulin 12 special release over here.
I think it's nearly 100-ish. I can't remember now, but £50 was definitely a steal for it. And it's pricing. I'm sure pricing is going to be a never-ending conversation, even when it's sensible. Diageo were in the news yesterday because they've just put Talisker 18 up to £285 here in the UK.
That's a bummer.
Which,
sorry.
that's a bummer. Is the kindest response I've heard to that.
285 pounds.
Yeah,
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
What is it in kilos? Is it different in kilograms?
It's message does not compute, I think, is the. So going back to our list, it was also kind of fun to go through the list, looking at it, that nothing on this list seemed disgustingly priced to me. So we had a back and forth a little bit where I was somewhat irritated by some of the appearances of some brands in here, but actually I was wondering what their qualifying criteria is, because flicking through this top 20, the pricing on it, nothing seems horrendous on here to me. Like, none of it I'm like, well, that's expensive, no one would buy that. I was excited to see some, like, there's a Redbreast on here. It's a little bit expensive, but it's one of their unusual ones. It was fun to see a couple of, like, Irish brands making it into the list. I would love to try that Redbreast. It's in Missouri Oak. All the Redbreast special editions I've had recently have been absolutely stonking delicious.
$200.
$200 sounds expensive.
Oh man, the Shevitz. Wow. Okay.
That's right in
so-
the ballpark for Redbreast, though. For the last few years,
No,
their
that-
numbers have only gone north.
Usually
I'm actually
attached
surprised
to
it's
age
only
statements,
200.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So that's why it's super fun for me to see. Obviously, the one that I'm most interested in at position 20 was the Westland. You know, like $75. That seems like a very achievable. If you see it on a list and you're doing a bit of Christmas shopping, $75 sounds like a good gifting price to me.
Even the VDC, 50% alcohol and $50.
Yeah.
That really blew me away.
Price, yeah.
I think that is a no-brainer. Just pick that up.
It was the
Seasonal
idea of like
treat in the festive season.
gingerbread stout cask sounds so good to me.
it would
Whiskey
work for
Advocate
you,
should make
Jess.
this into like a little pack where I could just buy like little samples of all of them. There is another
Advent
Isla
of
distillery
ours.
represented on this list that I'm also interested that they're. Yeah, it's kind of the obvious, if that makes sense. Like the obvious Islas. There isn't a Bowmore on this list. There isn't a Kilhoman. You know, like I don't know. That's what I mean. I wonder what the criteria for making it onto the list is. I'm always interested to see these like listicles of top 10 or top 20 or you must buy these, because I love the idea that as whiskey drinkers it gets us all talking and we all have a little bit of a discussion, and you know, inevitably we decide that whoever's put this list together actually knows nothing and we know much better.
Well, I think for your benefit, the benefit of the listeners, Jess, the criteria is they take their tasting notes from 2024. They look at the whiskies that scored 90 and above, and when they are doing their issue reviews, they know what they're tasting, they know what they're talking about. At the end of the year, they take all of the plus 90 reviews and they then sample those blind.
Yeah, that's right.
And so they just simply review the best whiskies in front of them. And then they kind of make arguments for, here's the quality of this one. Here's what I enjoyed in this one. Here's what I think was the runaway success of the group. And then that's how they get 20 up to number one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's also no way of making this fair. Whatever system you come up with, there's always going to be somebody who feels like that doesn't work for them, or it's not a true representation, or, you know, you've missed out these following things. Clearly, one of the
this is
criteria.
merely Whiskey Advocates top 20 of the year, right? And that's what we love about these, is we're chatting about it. We're having back and forths. Yeah. Can you imagine trying to blind score a bourbon next to an Isla, next to an American single malt?
Yeah, right.
I'm going to write to them and say the criteria that they've missed out of this is to fill it in a whole bottle into a giant Glencairn and to pass it around a pub, and whichever one goes down the best is immediately
that's
into
what they did
position
around their
number
offices. The Elements 2.0 was poured into a fishbowl Glencairn.
Yeah,
I don't have the list in front of me right this second, but didn't the 15-year-old Wild Turkey make it onto this list?
No.
Oh, I did think that when Joshua was mentioning
What's
it.
the Wild Turkey on the list?
There's
no
an
Wild
8-year-old
Turkey
Jimmy
on the
Russell.
list.
Yeah, there is. There's a Jimmy Russell 8-year-old 70th anniversary in position number 9.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, new 8-year-old, 50.5% alcohol, $50.
There you go. There you go. That's what I know them for, is that sensible pricing.
Yeah.
When you mentioned 15 years and 275 earlier, I understand that it fits within the age statements that they're working on. 275 is a hell of a lot of money. Like the Redbreast showing up at 200, I understand why it's 200. It's a hell of a lot of money. And so to hear a Jimmy Russell's at 50, thank you.
It's also really funny to me whenever I see lists like this and I see distillers that we have packaged that in my head, they only live in our packaging. It's always really weird to see them how they're actually presented to the rest of the world when they're not coming to indie bottlers. You know, there's a Heaven Hill here that's got quite a fun bottle, and then like the turkeys and the VDC. I think it was quite a long time after we had bottled a VDC and I don't know why, but I'd just never seen VDC in their own natural packaging, and that was really jarring to me. I mean, that's a complete privileged princess position to be in, right? The idea that somebody's liquid only exists within our glass, as opposed to how, you know, the team at VDC have carefully put together their labels, their packaging, their bottles, that kind of stuff. I'm like, no, it's a single caffeination bottle. So,
same rings true with all the art bags that we've bottled, all those 74s, the 68s.
And nobody knows what they look like. Yeah,
all the Lagavulins.
All those Bomars.
We, you know, to be fair, in one way or another, we have bottled each of the top 3.
That's right. That is very true.
That is very true.
What a whiskey advocate don't know anything, clearly. What next year? Just write to us at the podcast. We'll sort it out for you, lads. It's okay.
All right.
All right, let's get out of here. Let's get out of here on this.
All right.
Bum.
So now we are talking about our favorite episode / favorite conversation. I will allow a favorite. I will allow a runner-up. And I think we'll keep it there. My guess is one of you is going to pick 3 of them. Right, back to your point, Jason, which you either made this episode, I can't tell, I've had 3 whiskeys at this point, or you made in last episode, which was how do you rank the conversations that we've had, because none of them were stinkers, right? We're bringing on great people who have interesting stories, a lot to share, a lot to learn. So cutting it down to 2 could be difficult. If you want to throw in a third one, you can. But Jess, you started the episode leading us with your favorites. You're going to end the episode leading us with your favorites.
So I had a little. This is the bit of the podcast that I actually did some homework for, because I was first of all worried that you were going to call me out on things that I said in previous episodes. And then Mark Watt would write in, having listened to all of the episodes 3 times, and call me out on these facts that I've got that I said in a previous thing. But like you say, it's very hard to judge conversations. I obviously always and could listen for. He could read me some sort of phone book. I would find it entertaining. I'd love listening to Chris Riesbeck talk whiskey. It really was a lovely episode to go back and listen to. I really enjoyed listening to our friend James Saxon talking about Compass Box, and I was thinking about it on the way into the head office yesterday, on the way into Edinburgh on the train, about the idea of blending and how you go about that from an angle that we don't exist in. Like when we're picking casks, we're not thinking about creating, you know, a Compass Box or, you know, a blended product. We're just thinking about, when I think about us picking cask samples in my office last month, about how we go about that, that's very different. We're looking for snapshots that are creating a thing that we like, and that's not what you're doing when you're creating blends. So that's listened to. To be honest, it's any excuse to listen to somebody in the industry talking about what they do, which is a bit of the industry I don't really have access to. But I've really enjoyed listening to you talk to, you know, like people who are operating within the US. I really don't want to pick a favorite. Do I have to?
Yes, one.
Just one.
If you could only listen to one episode on a desert island for the rest of your days, everybody else be damned. You're telling them you would never listen to another word they have to say for themselves. What's your one?
You've got to save one child, Jess. Who's it going to be?
Feet to the fire.
I really like listening to, and it's funny because I didn't know you were going to interview this person. And I am sort of familiar with their liquids. So when you were like, we had a meeting and you told me you were interviewing them, I was like, oh, that's really funny because I've met him and now you've met him, but not collectively. And it's really funny. It's a funny connection through some of the whiskey judging that I do. I really enjoyed the episode of you guys talking to Lassie from Stowning.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Oh, I like that.
Just because I feel like it's a liquid that I am a little bit familiar with, and it's a concept and a structure in the US, like what Stowning are doing with some of their ryes and some of their grain work, must be familiar to American ears, but not because they're doing it in a very Danish way, which is, I think, maybe where some of my fascination with American single malt comes with. It's something that's very familiar to me, but it's being done in a way that's not necessarily natural to me. So I really enjoyed listening to the interview with him and learning a bit about Stouning. I really quite like their liquid, and it does quite well in the awards that I judge in, which are done blind. There's no bias there. But I just think it's interesting to listen to producers talking about their liquid, how they got to it, and then for you guys to kind of all bump into each other in that way too. I just thought that was really fun.
Nice one.
So
That was a
That's
great
my final
interview as well.
answer. And I bet it's not what you expected.
No, I love that a lot. If I may go next, Joshua.
Please.
I think with this question, it's always easy to have the kind of the most recent or the second half or the last couple of months in mind. And so I'm actually going to clear the decks by saying, number one, driving to and from Ardnam working with the two of you, and then having our time with Carl and the team over there was magnificent, absolutely magnificent. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Earlier this year, we spoke to James Saxon, longtime friend, very good lad within this industry. Having him on the podcast and then missing him by hours in Austin was painful to me. But having him on and getting him on wax was really important. I love that one. That's the decks cleared. I'm going to go back to the early part of the year for my runner-up episode, which was talking to Denny Potter and Jane Bowie. And the honesty that they brought to that conversation was immense. And when we hit the stop button on the recording, we made a point of saying to them, thank you sincerely for that level of honesty. That was somewhat shocking, when you walk into Denny Potter talking about, the dissolution of his marriage. You talk to the two of them going to a bank to raise $50 million, right? You talk to them about houses and trucks are on the line. Like, even just describing that right now gives me chills. Like, that was phenomenal. And we must, in 2025, go to Kentucky and see them in person 100%. And walk through muddy fields and look at where structures are at. Like, that is deeply personal to me now. And I really want to go and say hi to them, see how they're doing, and continue to spread the word there. So that's my runner-up, which then brings me, and the reason for this, the reason for this entire preamble, I'm going to pick the episode that was last bar one, which when I went to Virginia Distillery Company for Barrel Boot Camp, that was the realization of a dream that I had had for 2, maybe 3 years when I first heard they had Barrel Boot Camp. And when I left there, I texted you, Josh, I've said this in a previous episode, and I said, I think that is arguably the best recording in 8 seasons of One Nation Under Whisky. And their level of honesty. And to your point, Jess, producers talking live on a recording about cask decisions was everything we get to enjoy in this industry that we're always trying to present to listeners of the podcast. And I thought VDC owned that, ran with that, and I think we put out something in that episode that we have never put out previously. So I was floored by that. I was incredibly proud of that. And I can't help but name that my favourite episode of season 8.
Absolutely.
I think it definitely comes across that you enjoyed yourself. I didn't vote you because I am hideously jealous and I was not at Barrel Boot Camp. And so therefore, you don't get my interview of the year. That's my personal criteria, which is... How annoyed am I that I was not present for such an exciting adventure? Hi, no votes. That's
That perfectly checks out. And let me say this. And so Anna at Westland, who is a dear friend of Amanda's, and Anna has also wanted to get herself over to Barrel Boot Camp, but it's a little trickier when you live in the Pacific Northwest. Anna texted me when the episode went live and said, "Your," and then 2 capital words here, "your pure delight in the warehouse with Amanda and Co. is gosh darn adorable." And I was like, my work here is done. Yeah. That is everything I need to see, hear, and read. So it was a blast. It was an absolute blast. And I wanted to communicate that to the listeners of One Nation Under Whisky.
Well, I got to tell you, the number of listeners who have reached out to just talk about being a fly on the wall to that experience, it was fascinating. Like, they just felt as if they were there with you, discovering with you, experiencing the honesty there.
That's it.
So yeah, job well done.
Cheers. More of that in season 9.
Yep, for sure. So I've got 2. I've got a runner-up, and then I've got a top, plus I have an announcement that's connected to this. So my runner-up is the conversation we had with Chris Respect. And right, listening back to that, here's a guy that we've known from, likely before Single Cask Nation started, right? He's one of those whiskey faces that we've known forever, and a guy that we've respected. At the time he was made a keeper, he was the youngest person to have made keeperdom. Like, he is a true whiskey file, if you will. And the open conversation we had with him, I enjoyed so much. But here's the cherry on the top. Steve Hawley never, ever gives compliments. I shouldn't say he never ever gives compliments, but he's so rare. He's so rare with his compliments. He only dishes them out when he feels he really needs to. And that's me throwing you under the bus, Mr. Hawley. That's right. You heard me. Look at Jason's red face. Holy crap. All right, little red breast in Jason's class.
That was my red breast.
Oh, boy. Put your red breast away, Jason. Please.
Lustau edition.
I don't have a red breast, but I'll pour something. I'll pour more Midgey. That's what I'll do. Actually, it's important that I pour a little more Midgey because it is excellent. So having Steve Hawley reach out to you and I, saying that we absolutely knocked it out of the park with our conversation with Chris. Like, when Steve says nice things, we've done an okay job.
This isn't going to make our next meeting extremely awkward. I might just call in sick for this.
I have he's growing hair to pull it out. So
yeah, right. I have as my counter to your about these 2 fine men of the whiskey world. They go fishing together. So I don't know if you've got it in the US, but in the UK there's a TV show which is Paul Whitehouse and Bob Mortimer. They go fishing, and the whole TV show is like them fishing. And that sounds like a very dull premise, but they are both hilarious and excellent characters to have. Just watching them do their thing. Mm-hmm. I would like somebody in the US to commission an American version of this, and I want it to be those 2 fishing. I would watch that. Just them in some canyon somewhere fishing, living the American dream, just shooting the shit.
Yeah, I wonder if they're having interesting conversations or just enjoying the silence.
I imagine.
Or both. That's the magic of the TV show.
Yeah.
So if there are any TV producers or commissioning editors listening to this podcast, you can have that for free, provided that I am still able to access watching it in the UK.
All right. Let me say what my favorite is here. And it's not too dissimilar, Jason, to what you talked about with your VDC conversation. We, with this podcast, especially since COVID, have fallen into this rut and maybe rut isn't the word, but we've fallen into this rhythm.
Yeah, that's a harsh word.
Yeah. It's better
Rhythm's
said.
10,000 times better. 87.
10,000 times better than Beaumont Darkest, right? So we've fallen into this rhythm of reaching out to people via email and saying, hey, we'd love to have you on the podcast. Here's a Zoom link. Let's have a conversation. And we have phenomenal conversations in doing so. Right, Lisa from Stonning, right, from Denmark. Respec, from Found North, and the list can go on and on and on and on. But getting back out there meant and means a lot, and so here we were in Scotland in November. I caught COVID. I couldn't enjoy my time with you both at Glasgow's Whiskey Fest. I could just sit home watching TV and eating takeout. And thankfully the COVID passed. And we're on the road to our friends at Ardnamurchan Distillery. And we had this idea where we said, let's record a distillery tour of Ardnamurchan and give people that fly in the wall experience. What's it like to tour a distillery? You may have never been to a distillery before, or maybe you've been to an American distillery, you've not toured a Scottish distillery, whatever the case may be. And the number of people after us releasing that who reached out saying, I felt like I was at the distillery. I felt like I was in the group with you all. Was awesome. And there were a few times, like when I'm editing that episode, and we're all wearing mics, and my mic is connected with Carl's mic, and your mics are connected, on separate tracks. And I'm editing, and I'm talking with Carl, and I can hear you guys having your side conversations because you're behind me as we're walking to the warehouse, or you're in another section of the warehouse. And at first I was like, man, I wish these guys would shut up. It's making my editing difficult. But then I said, you know what? This is what happens when you're in a distillery. A number of people, and there's side conversations happening, and it's just it was natural.
That's why we did it.
You're welcome.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yep. And it was such a joy. And then I think back to before we started that, and just getting there, and like you had said, Jess, going down to the pier and drinking Ardnamurchan at that pier with Carl and with, oh jeepers, I'm going to forget his name now, Callum, right?
Yes.
And the dog, whatever the dog's name is, if I'm going to forget a name, it's going to be the dog's name. That time was so incredibly special to me personally that not only was that my favorite episode of season 8, but B, my announcement is that Ardnamurchan has gone from my number 3 distillery to my number...
Here it is.
My number 2 distillery. It is not Imperial.
Lagavulin is safe for another day.
Lagavulin is safe for
They are
another
quaking
day.
in their boots.
But they're right. I feel like Casey
Lagavulin.
Kasem is here, and they're climbing the charts right now. Yeah, Lagavulin and then Ardnamurchan. A distillery that is now only 10 years old compared to a distillery that is 200 years old. That's why I poured more Midgie. Just, okay. Yes, go ahead. What do you
This guy really wants to watch.
Inquiring minds want to know, Joshua. What does Lagavulin have to do in 2025 to keep the top spot?
Lagavulin in 2025 to retain the top spot in the incomplete Joshua Hatton list needs to lower their pricing.
There you go.
Well, I think Ardnamurchan have got that in the bag then. Well done, lads.
Yeah, listen, when I first started drinking whiskey, of course, it was a different time. It's almost 20 years ago at this point, which is kind of wild to my mind. But it was a different time when I could get a bottle of Lagavulin 16 on sale for $49. I understand that we're living in a different time where more people are interested in whiskey. We lived through tariffs that increased prices. Like, I get all that. And I'm not expecting the prices to come down to where they were 18, 20, 15 years ago, whatever the case may be. But I think we're living in a time where some companies are aiming to relax some pricing when and where they can. And I would like to see more people drinking Lagavulin because I think that their spirit is impeccable. I think that in most cases it's spotless. But for some people, it becomes unobtainium. And I would argue that $170 for a 12-year-old had me stopping in my tracks. I stopped buying the 12-year-old when it had hit $125 or $130 a bottle. And that's a shame for my favorite distillery. And I get supply and demand, but when you have deals like 50 pounds on Amazon in the UK for the previous year's release, let's relax if we can. I'm not part of Diageo. I don't know their company. I don't know, what their budgets look like. I'm not on their accounting team, but I think that there may be room to let others in. And if there is room, I hope they make it possible. I would like to see more people come into whiskey because, and it's not just them. I think there's a number of companies who have done this because whiskey's become so popular. It's gotten to the point where whiskey is not necessarily for everybody. And I would like to see prices come down so more people can come into the fold.
I will say this to you in anticipation of 2025 and
the tariffs that are going to be reenacted.
I thought we were going to make it the whole way through this episode with no mention of that.
Okay.
Not going to say that. As somebody who once had Lafroig in his top spot, and they lost that to an up-and-coming, wonderful, delicious, affordable distillery. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to let go of the past and welcome the future into your heart.
God, and if we ever needed to convince people we're not a cult,
aren't we though? We're not a cult.
I think the bigger question is, how badly does Ardnamurchan have to fuck up to not become my favorite distillery? They just release after release, cask after cask, are continually knock it out of the park, whether it's peated, unpeated, a marriage of the two styles. And
we'll certainly be releasing more Ardnamurchan than Lagavulin and single cask Nation livery in 25.
Oh, that is very.
Spoiler!
Well done, you. For someone who doesn't always release spoilers, well done, you.
Yeah. I think the thing that may do it for Joshua is when we found out the entire Ardnamurchan team are massively team dog and not team cat.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Oh, they've just hit
every last
spot
one of them
1.5.
cats.
1.5.
This has been a perfect way to wrap up the year. This is always this itself is a highlight of the year, right?
And you know what?
Can I use and abuse this whilst we're wrapping up as a little? This week I have confirmed my attendance. I am going to be going to, and this sort of ties in with my thought about the Cabrach. I am going to be at the Spirit of Speyside Whiskey School.
Hey,
I'm going back to Whiskey School. I wonder
Jess.
if there's any Podcast listeners who are also going to be going. I would love to hear from you if you are. If not, I'm just going to force whoever has signed up for it to be my friend instead. But it'd be really fun if there were Podcast listeners who were also making it Speyside. I had found out about this because obviously Springbank Whiskey School is very famous and it has a waiting list that is longer than my patience allows for me to queue for it. So I had asked my friend Chris Coates, who's the editor of the Whiskey magazine, if he knew of any other things that I could do that were sort of whiskey fun and a bit more than just kind of classroom learning. And he had recommended it. And the thing that sealed the deal for me is that the school is headed up by Alan Winchester. So this is a way for me to have access to Alan that won't require a restraining order.
Yeah, right. There you go.
So there you go. To other podcast listeners, when I signed up this year, hoping that maybe I'd get a last minute space. They said no, and our 2025 is full. We'll put you down for the 2026 and let you know if any spaces come up. And I did get an email saying that there was a space, so I've made it onto the end of April in 2025. I will be in Speyside doing the whiskey school. So I wonder if there's anybody else out there who's on it as well.
How can they get in touch with us, Jess? If someone wanted to reach out, how would they do that?
They could write to the Balmenic bunch and they will forward on any correspondence. They're a kind bunch like that. They can get hold of me on Instagram at whiskeyjess. They could email the podcast. Are our podcast emails working yet? Maybe they could just email our info at singlecastnation.com. Yeah, info at singlecastnation.com. Or you can find me, Jess, at singlecastnation.com.
Hey, there you go.
There you go.
Or in our very active, nice Facebook group of nice people doing nice things.
Mm-hmm.
Also the case.
Indeed.
Yeah, a nice enclave.
Somebody that I did not have down as a potential bakery a whiskey combiner of things. Travis Williams was making some incredible baked goods with our brandy, which made me immediately go to the cupboard and see if I could find it. And I've got a little bit that's open here.
There you go. You don't have to make cakes with our brandy, Jess.
So I need to make some sort of tiramisu cakey brandy thing. So yeah, that's the kind of thing you can do if you join our Facebook group.
Ooh la la. I like the sound of that. Well, I
Social
love the
media's
fact we're
fun,
sitting
Jason.
here.
You should join it.
Easy, settle down. And I love the fact that we've closed out the year. Our next episode will be our preview episode for 2025, where maybe the T word will get floated, but it's certainly not getting floated here at the end of 2024.
Well, the word that is tea cakes.
Oh, Jess.
Controversial.
Oh, my
Different controversy.
gosh. I was doing a tasting with Anna Hins, and she sent me a message about Tunnocks tea cakes. Not good, Jess. All right, listen.
Well,
Cheers, everybody.
we can save that for an ongoing 2025 fight.
Listen,
That's a better T word.
I think this is the way we need to get out of this episode. Of course, wishing everybody a happy new year, right? Because that's coming up. But this episode drops on Christmas Day, and B, the first night of Hanukkah. So,
Indeed.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy belated Festivus, Happy Kwanzaa the next day, if that's your bag too. Happy holidays to all. Jess, Jason, I love you both. Listeners, I love you equally. This is a joy to me, and it's a joy spending time with you both, drinking whiskey and talking about what it is, what we do, that we do.
Yeah, cheers, everybody. Peace, love, and whiskey for all.
I grab
Can
my
we clink?
glasses. Ready?
We Colonel Clink?
Clink, clink.
Here we go. And